Okay, I'll tell you what, we're going to go ahead and get started, and people are going to join because we've got kind of a long presentation today. But I want to tell you what today's meeting is about because it's a little bit different than what we've done before. Let's go ahead and advance the slide there. Slide there, Klaus. Just real quick, we've been through this before. There's a recording going on. Everything that's being recorded. The chat is not being recorded, so you know whatever's in the chat. If you need it, it's going to get lost. But the chat is not being recorded. We would ask if you have a question, put it in the Q&A. Don't put it in the chat. There's going to be several hundred people on the call today, and trying to keep up with the chat is difficult enough as it is. But the important questions. And please keep the questions focused on today's presentation and not about who's going to win the football game tonight. But
there was no question about this.
There's no question about this. There's a little sparring going on within the group. So if you do that, everything's going to go along smoothly. This is your group, and today we are dedicated at looking at who you are, what makes up this group, who are the users who are in the group. I hope we're going to have a lot of fun doing it. This is our 7th meeting of the year. We meet every 6 to 8 weeks. It's going to be the last meeting for this year. We finished our first year. We're really pleased with how this turned out, and we're really looking forward to next year also. Klaus and I will do, well, it's not Klaus and I. We're going to have everybody involved in today's presentation. And it's going to be kind of fun because you're going to get to see the people who really do the work. And you get to see them, and they did a short presentation on data that came from him. And then, of course, Carl's going to be our featured speaker. Let's go to the next slide.
Yeah.
Carl's going to, what we're actually doing today is after the last meeting. In our last meeting, we looked at Charts 101. Klaus and I were talking. We wanted to know a little bit more about you, or about all of us, about the people that make up this group. Where do you live? Where do you come from? What's your background? And all that data is captured in the tool that we use when you sign up for these meetings. That tool is called Splash, if you're not aware of that. And we were able to download all of that data and for each one of the previous 6 meetings. And then we were able to go in and take a look at that data. And what we're going to do today is we're going to take a look at what that data tells us, what insights we can draw about this group, who's in the group, and where you're from. No, your name's not going to show up. So all of you who put in AAAA as your full name, don't worry. We don't know how to get to you. Okay. So we're not looking at anybody in particular, but we are looking at the overall group as a whole. And then Carl's going to take a look, and he's going to say, hey guys, you could have done this a whole lot easier using preps. And I kid around a little bit, but this is kind of a rosebud to Carl. Carl, your topic, since the first session, we've had 6 sessions now, your topic always comes up is, what are you going to do prep? So today we're going to do prep. Klaus, you want to introduce Carl?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to have a presentation about prep, Carl is the natural choice for this. I think Carl has been around in the Tableau world for quite a long time. He's a Tableau visionary working at the Information Lab in London. And as part of the data school, we all know. And Carl has pretty much focused on Tableau Prep since it's on the market. There is a brilliant social initiative going on, Prep and Data. And I always recommend to my students to do these sessions, to learn about data preparation, because we all know that up to 80% of an analyst's work is not data visualization, but data preparation. So bringing everything in shape. And Carl was kind enough to be here with us today. He also wrote a book about Tableau Prep up and running. I also recommend that book, of course. And I'm really looking forward to Carl's session. So thank you, Carl, for being here tonight. We just meet last Monday in London on a Tableau event. So good to see you again today, Carl.
Likewise, thank you for having me, everyone.
Yeah. Okay, good. When we looked into the data that Jim just mentioned, we also learned that we have lots of new members or new attendees every single time. So we are happy to introduce ourselves, of course. Maybe if I should start, my name is Klaus. I'm from Münster in Germany, and I've been using Tableau since 2017. I love to play with the tool. I love to play with data. And Tableau has become a really major part of my professional life. I'm teaching at university. I'm an accountant from my profession is accounting and controlling, but data analytics has become a really large part of this. Since I've started working with these great tools. Enid, do you want to go next?
Yep, I'll go next. So my name is Enid Burchett. I am from Indianapolis, Indiana. I work in higher ed, University of Indianapolis. And I would say I've worked with Tableau for a couple of years now. I still consider myself a newbie in the sense that I see what Klaus and the team can do, and I'm like, okay, I'm still not at that level. But it's always nice to see what the team can do and learn from them. So I really enjoy coming to these sessions.
Okay, Reyes, do you want to go next?
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Reyes. I'm from Fort Collins, Colorado. I'm a bioinformatician by training, and I've been using Tableau for about 2 years now to look at large omics data sets and others things. I've been a huge fan. I've been participating in the user group meetings for over a year now, and as Enid said, I feel like I learn something new every time I come here. So really look forward to what we're going to learn from Carl today. I know I did a lot of work in R to clean my data, and I'm curious to see how prep would help me and streamline my workflow.
Okay, Jim, do you want to say a few words about you?
Sure. I'm Jim Dehner. I live in Nashville, or just outside of Nashville. Klaus and I co-founded this group. I happen to be a Tableau visionary, but I'm also a 6-time forum ambassador, and I may have met some of you out on the forum. I've been using Tableau for about 6 years, and prep for about an hour and a half. Well, that's not quite fair, Carl. But I hope to learn a lot about prep today, because what I know about prep isn't a whole lot, or certainly not enough. So I plan to learn a whole lot today. Brian?
Okay, and we have Viraj.
Hey, hi everyone. I'm Viraj from Mumbai, India, and as Anil said, we are all newbie by heart, always learning, and this group, it's awesome because we keep learning in every session. And when we talk about data visualization, the first step, data preparation, and that's what we are going to do today, right? So, and thanks Carl for joining us. That's going to be a wonderful session learning about data prep, Tableau prep. Thank you.
There's 2 people who couldn't be with us today. Horace is in Nigeria, and Laura is in Chicago. And they are very much an integral part of this team. And quite honestly, we couldn't do it without this group of people. And what we're going to do today is each of them are going to have the opportunity to actually make a presentation to you. You're going to get to see the brains behind the outfit, if you want to think of it, if you want to think of it that way. And each one of them took a look at the same data set and have different interpretations of what that data set tells us. Let's go on to that next slide there. Okay. Literally, after about 5 or 6 of these, we were asking ourselves, what do we know about you, the users who come and spend time with us? And the answer was not a whole lot, but we had the data. It may not have looked very good. If you've ever been out to Splash, it's just a mess. But you know what? That's the same type of data that you deal with every day. When you're on your job, the data you get is never perfect. It doesn't answer all your questions. There's pieces missing. Things don't go together. So yeah, this is the same sort of data that you work with every day. We took a look at it. We're going to see a whole lot of numbers today. But I just want you to know, over this past year, there's been over 4,000 of you attend these meetings. You came from over 100 countries across the globe, and that's real gratification for us. and you were on 6 of the 7 continents. And we didn't have any in Antarctica. I can't understand that. Okay, let's go on to the next one.
Yeah,
Okay.
since this session is about prep, and unfortunately we were not able to just connect to some table out of Splash, we received lots of CSV files, basically one CSV file for every meeting. And Laura Matthews, she cannot be with us today, like Jim said. She took the task to bring the data into shape, that we all can work with the data. So she connected to the CSV files. You can see it here on the left side. We have the 6 meetings we had so far. Then she did some removing of columns, some renaming, because there were different labeled columns in each CSV, depending on the reminders that sent out to make her union work somehow properly. Then she did some further cleaning, some aggregation, and eventually outputted everything into a CSV file again. And we then connected to this CSV file. And each of us took a look at the data and tried to find some insights that are worth sharing here with you. And the first one will be, Jim, do you want to add something?
Yeah. I think it's important for everybody to know who these who everybody is and what they do. Laura and Reyes do all of the Splash work. So when you get a notice, when you get an invitation, when you get something, a reminder, that sort of thing, Laura and Reyes are the people that do that. And thank you very much for doing that, because if it wasn't for that, we'd be an absolute mess. Now we're going to go on to Enid here. Let's go over to the next one. You know all those Kahoot quizzes you like? Enid does those. Okay, so she's the one you got to get to know. If you get to know Enid and you get the answers before the quiz,
You get the prizes.
You're going to do much better on it. Okay, Enid, take it away.
Yeah, so originally I wanted to look at what sources you guys were coming from. So like, are you coming in through email, text messages, or links? And turns out I don't have that data. So how often does that happen when you want to answer a question and you don't have the data? So quickly I pivoted and I wanted to see what countries do you guys live in. So I was able to go ahead and, I'm sorry, I think that's my dog barking. I don't know if you could hear him, but I was able to go ahead and put the data into Tableau and do a quick map. And here we're seeing, I filtered by the people who check in. So check-in is the status as we are right now in the actual live seminar, not someone that came in later or viewed it later. So this is the first graph. Obviously you can see we have attendees from all around the world. And if you go to the next slide, I wanted to see it in a simpler manner. So I did that. Same data, I filtered by a bar graph, and I saw that most of our attendees were from the US. So this is really good information. However, like it doesn't, now that I know like most of our attendees are from the US, it kind of makes the rest of the data not seem complete. So what I did is I went ahead and removed the US because I wanted to see where else we were getting people from. And once I removed the US, I was able to see a better picture of the rest of the world. So we're getting a lot from the UK, a lot from Canada, India, Mexico, Brazil. It was very interesting to see the full picture where our attendees are coming from.
Thank you, Enid. And I think Reyes further digged into this question of where our attendees are coming from. So let's move on to Reyes.
Yeah, awesome. So I'll say this was my first time working with geographic data. I don't usually get I've never had the opportunity to do this in my day job, so this was quite fun. But as most of our statewide data came from the USA, I used that as my target. So I wanted to see how did the attendance vary by state in the US. And this is a small dashboard that I built. I used 3 different sheets here. The first sheet being a map sheet where I use state count data overlaid on the color example. So we have this nice kind of heat map-esque by state, which is really easy and beautiful to look at. We can see very clearly California has a very high attendance count, but I'm a person that loves numbers. So I also added a horizontal bar chart that mimics this on the bottom left, which gives us actual counts for us to easily view. And then the last sheet that I added was a table sheet that gave us the total counts for that particular day. I'll say that I leveraged filters in each of these sheets, and I filtered by status and event date. So status was either attending, submitted, pending, etc. So I filtered this only to attending participants. And then I'll also let you know this, that of all the invites that we sent out, we actually had about 24% of those invites with state data. So as Jim mentioned earlier, this is a small subset of the actual participants that took place here, but that's the data that we had available. And then the last thing that I filtered on is event date. So I show all here. If you go to the next slide, please. By looking at all, we see that California is composed of the highest attendance with 13% of the total for 2022. And if you go to the next slide, if we look at March now, so we're using March as the filter, we see that March had the highest attendance by state for the year. So this particular month, where California and Texas continued to be the highest states with participants from the USA. So that's all I have here. I think this dashboard was a lot of fun. And again, leveraging those filters on the right make for a nice interactive dashboard to give you quick summary statistics in the USA.
Well done, Reyes.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, next one is Viraj.
Well, let me just say this about Viraj. Viraj is very special. Viraj, all those things you see out on social media that kind of hype what we're doing and talk about what we're doing, those all come from Viraj. And thank you, Viraj, because it's really made a difference out there. And I really appreciate it. And I'm sure everybody else does also. Okay.
Thank you. And it's fun, being part of this group. So, well, we saw Enid and Riaz talk about how the spread is with, how from where all we are joining in. So instead of going for the countries, I clubbed them to the regions, continent like North America, Europe, and so on. And as we say, and I wanted to see which session had more, coming from which country, which region. And ever since our third session, which talked about Sankey chart, I wanted to build one. And I thought, this is the best kind of example where I can show which region goes in, which session had more attendees and which from which region. So I could see the fifth session that we had about table calculation. That was one of the awesome sessions that everyone loved about it. I think that's where we saw a good spread from all the regions, and again Europe had more, keeping United States away because that had always been the maximum attendees. Can we move to the next? So as Jim mentioned that, and I post out on social media, talked about us, group, and then I just wanted to know, how the RS, people are registering it. Are they doing it before, after, on the day? And that's where I wanted to see how many registration happens on the day of the event, and then I can see a lot is happening. And I'm happy to see, some who would RSVP for the earlier events, because they realize, oh, I probably missed it, I want to watch this recording, better register for the updates. And that's where you can see some of the later sessions, and we can see a increase where everyone kind of RSVP'd afterwards. Yeah, next one. And it just wanted to see who are attending how many sessions, but then probably I'm not sure if the data has been that accurate enough, but I feel that there were 71 of them who have attended all the sessions, and thank you for being with us for all those 6 sessions. And yep, that's what I wanted to show you. Well, in
Okay.
next.
Yeah. Thank you, Viraj. And I'm taking over for Horace. So Horace looked at a similar question, and he was focusing on retention. And he created these 2 bar charts here at the top. The left one, attendance by month or more by meeting. So we had our highest attendee in the first one, but also the September meeting was quite high. I think this one was colliding with TC, so there was a drop, and October was, I think, a bank holiday somewhere near. So these were the reasons why we had some lower attendance. And then pretty much what Viraj did, Horace did here in this stack bar chart. The parts of the bar chart are colored by the first meeting where people were in. So the orange one, like Viraj had in his chart, are people that have been joining our meetings in all sessions since January. So we're here at 78, Viraj was at 71. We couldn't figure out the difference. Maybe it's the 7 of us that were included in this one and not in Viraj, but not sure. Yeah, and then Horace also took a look at the percentage difference. Yeah, and again, here the drop in May, collision with Tableau conference, and then some changing depending on the number of attendees. Yeah, so again, thank you to the 71 or 78 people joining us every single time. And if there are some of you here in the meeting today, just let us know in the chat, and then you've made the full strike over the year. That was great. Thank you. Yeah, and then the last thing, so I took a look at the data too, and I was interested in what you do for a living. So what's your job? There is a field with your job role. There were not too many, or there were quite a lot that filled in this field, but not all. So this is also just a subset. And there were really funny job descriptions. I think my favorite was the data clown. I don't know if the data clown is today with us. And I saw Geek Girls. So it was really funny to look at this data. And what I did here, so first of all, I'm not sure if I have this open. I do have it open. So we had to, or I had to reiterate on the prep flow, because the job title, like I said, was really messy. And what I did here, so first of all, I filtered only on the checked in people. So I wanted to see the job roles of the people that were actually attending the meetings. Then I got rid of everything else. I just kept the job title. Then I got rid of all the null values, and this just saying that there is no job title, also got rid of that. And then I did a really cool feature, that is the grouping feature. So you can group values in different ways. And what I did here, I think, was the pronunciation grouping. That replaced already 983 values by 219 values. So values that are pronounced similarly, Tableau Prep realizes, okay, these are the same and puts them together in a group. And then I did another cleaning on, where is it? Group values on the spelling. So if there are little spelling differences, Tableau also groups these values into one group, and therefore you get less different values and just a more homogeneous more homogeneous data. So and that was then quite easy to analyze. I tried to make up some buckets. So for example, I searched for the term analyst in the job role, and that was in 1,454 times was that the case. And we have many data analysts here among us. Then I searched for words that say that this is kind of senior management that is attending. I searched for the term managers, and these were my managers group. Then we have lots of engineers also with us. So maybe today even more when the topic is Tableau prep. And lots of other interesting job descriptions like epidemiologists. We were discussing earlier that this might have to do with a pandemic and how much data analytics and data visualization has become a part of that. And that, yeah, there are just many of these people that are interested in data visualization and using a tool like Tableau. Yeah, so these were some interesting insights we got, and we will for sure use to rethink about how we do everything next year, how we send out our invitations, our communication with you, how we set up topics, and this will help us further along.
So it was a rather interesting question that came in, and I guess we know the data, so we're kind of glossing over something. When you respond to an invitation, we get what's called an RSVP. And then when you check in, you get marked as being checked in. And we see those two different numbers. What you're seeing here mostly is all checked in data. There's people who were live in the session. There's also this other group of people, and many of those people have signed up knowing that, hey, for one reason or another, they can't attend the session, but they want the recording of the session. And yes, the recordings of the session do go out after the session, and they're also out on the Tableau user group hub. So as far as that goes, there's always a recording out there. So if you can't make a session, sign up for it anyway, and that way you'll get the recording. Okay. I'm sorry, Klaus, I just saw that question come in, wanted to take care of it.
Yeah, very, very good point. And I think that's basically it. I'm asking the team, has anyone anything to add or to share on this one?
We have a quick question. Why did you do pronunciation first and then spelling?
That's a good question. To be honest, it was a little bit try and error. I don't know. Maybe that would be a good question to Carl. If it makes any difference to do it the other way around.
So many answers to that. It does make a difference, because if you think about how prep's looking at it, pronunciation is looking at the way those syllables would be said in whatever domain you're working in. So I've worked with my French colleagues, and the example you're about to see, they get different answers to what I get based on my English UK domain laptop. So prep finds some nuance there. So if you think about that first grouping that's going on, we're taking all of those records and we're creating a tighter group of data off the back of it. And then prep's using that result to then work out the next. So spelling is purely taking the same letters, but just the odd one that's different. They'll group those terms together. And then last but not least is common characters, that the actual string, so that value has exactly the same or very similar characters. They're just in lots of different orders, so very different places. Then those fields get grouped together. So overall, you wouldn't get that different an answer when you go from different angles or take different approaches first and last, etc. But there will be some nuance difference based on that first formation that comes certainly from pronunciation. Is there a right way to do it? No, there isn't one way or the other. You've got to go experiment. But part of what we'll see with prep is that experimentation shortly. So I'll say no more. And Klaus has stolen my favorite feature of prep already. So
oh no, I'm sorry, Carl. But investing, that was super fast to do, right? So it's just 2 clicks, and you come from a rather chaotic column to a quite quite structured and tidy column, and that is really fun to do. And I'm not going to talk about prep any longer because I don't want to take away your next examples. Are there other questions in the chat or the Q&A on this data and on the analysis we did?
No, nothing. It's probably more of a Tableau prep, which I think after Carl's sessions mostly should get resolved. So
okay,
yeah.
Yeah, I'd say then let's move on to Carl and Tableau prep. Carl, if you want to share your screen, then you can take over.
Cool. Thank you very much, everybody. So you may notice from my accent, yes, I'm based out in the UK. So if you want me to repeat things or say things slower, please do drop those questions into the Q&A and we'll pick them up at the end. There is so much I could talk about Tableau prep, so much so, as Klaus mentioned, I wrote a book on it. So I really enjoyed the tool. I think the big thing for me is it's exactly who we're talking to here, right? It's lowered the difficulty that we've had with preparing data before. It's made it so much easier. And that's kind of what I wanted to give was a flavor today of just some of that kind of nuance and how it's become easier, rather than just kind of assuming that life's tough, the tool's tough. Data preparation has traditionally been done by centralized IT teams. So we never got the chance to do that. I'm a history and politics student originally, so these were the skills that I never had. But tools like Tableau Prep have changed that so much so to the point of where I'm at. And as it was mentioned earlier, I've used Tableau for a while now. It's been over 10 years of pretty much using the tool set, the platform that is Tableau now, every day for about those 10 years, which is quite crazy. So yeah, ask me anything, always happy to answer those questions as we go. So what are we going to talk today? We're going to talk about how to think like a data prepper. Tableau Prep is this tool that's made our lives easier. We'll have a look at that shortly. But I want to help you think about the skills that you need to go and take advantage of that tool. We'll talk about what Tableau Prep is, why the skill set is a little bit different from Tableau Desktop. And my kind of number one thing that we talk about quite a lot at the data school, where people make the kind of biggest advance was when they start preparing their data, is actually thinking about planning your prep, just in the same way that you might plan or sketch out a dashboard. If you can plan your prep ahead of time, you can actually get on the front foot rather than be reacting to the data and potentially go off on a tangent. You can control that. So we'll go through what that is and what that looks like, but we'll also dive into some demos within the tool. So you look and get a feel of what the tool's doing and how it does it. So before we go on, we've used this term Tableau Prep a few times, but what do we actually mean by it? So first of all, it's two different tools. We have Tableau Prep Builder, kind of in the same way that we have Tableau Desktop. It's a tool where we can go and connect to data, prepare the data in the way that we need to, also explore it within Tableau Prep Builder, just in the same way that we would with Desktop, and then produce an output. With Tableau Desktop, the output is the analysis that we're actually conducting on that. But with Tableau Prep Builder, we're producing the data set to make that analysis easier. We are having a little bit of a chat before we opened up the webinar today, but one of the big things that Tableau Prep offers up is the ability to simplify the usage within Desktop by reshaping the data or cleaning it, so we don't have to do horrible calculations further down the line in Tableau Desktop. So if you've got the skills, you can help out your colleagues and peers quite a lot. The second tool is Prep Conductor. It's the server component of Tableau Prep. This is where you're scheduling workflows, but we also now have the ability to use in-browser editing of prep flows, and we can actually go and build prep flows from scratch in the server environment, which sounds quite cool. It opens the door to more people doing it, but most importantly, you're working on a bigger, more powerful machine than your laptop. So when we're crunching big data sets, Prep Conductor on the server is going to do a lot more of the work for us and handle some of those bigger tasks than what we might have been able to do on our own laptops. The tool's still relatively new. Certainly when we look at data prep solutions elsewhere, lots of them are 10 or so, or in Alteryx's case, I'm an Alteryx partner as well, nearly 30 years old now in its various guises. So Tableau Prep's still kind of the new kid on the block. I'm going to be honest, we still face some of that. We still kind of stumble across bugs where we haven't hit certain use cases before, or there's still features that we're slowly building and adding into that. shout those up on the forum, shout those up on the ideas pages. Everybody wants to know kind of what comes next for prep, and there's some great stuff coming. I hope, fingers crossed. I'm wishing it all works out the way that the devs want it to. They've got some great ideas. I can't wait to see them in the real world. But really what Tableau Prep is doing is solving this idea of those repeatable steps. I saw some comments in the chat earlier that you're comfortable using Excel, you'll take data sources in from others, you might restructure those in your tool of choice, maybe it is Excel, and then you can go and do your analysis from there. That's great, but every single time that you're doing that, you're either writing macros in an Excel sense, or you can actually go and build a flow once, and then you just press play within Prep. The benefit of Prep is we can also point that to databases and go and connect to much bigger, larger scale data sets than what something like Excel could handle. But it's aimed at taking these kind of simple, repeatable tasks to either clean or reshape data and allow us to build something once and then gain the benefit of those time savings in the longer term. But one of the things that I really love about Prep is it's taken Tableau's visualized sense and actually turned it into a data exploration tool as much as it is a data preparation tool. We'll see this little excerpt of what's called the profile pane down in the bottom right-hand corner here, where Tableau Prep is building little profiles, so little histograms of data that help me understand with the longer bars what the most common values are, but also not just seeing all of those different values, but how frequent they're found within my data set. It helps me not just understand what I need to do, but where are my big pain points and where should I go and tackle first of all. So lots of what I'm seeing when I go and use Tableau Prep is what I used to do back in my job when I had hundreds of thousands of database tables to go and explore, but not much documentation around what I would find where. So I was always connecting Tableau Desktop to that server environment to then go and actually understand what's in my data. I kind of cried when I first saw Prep, or as it was known, Maestro back in the day, because that time saving of just having to build all of those individual histograms would just be gone if I just had Tableau Prep. So the development team of Tableau has done a great job. They've reduced me to tears because I could have done so much more with my time. But at least that functionality is there for you now, so you can go and take advantage of that. When Tableau Prep came out, I thought everybody was going to go and feel in a really similar way to what I did. I don't have that deep coding experience in R or Python where I can go and build these kind of profiles and change data shapes myself. I relied on this kind of different experience where it's a much more drag and drop interface. I thought everyone was going to jump at it, but what I soon and very quickly realized was actually people didn't know how to approach data prep problems, which is why we created Prep and Data, to allow people to have the chance to go and practice. If you're working in a big corporate organization, strangely, they're not going to let you play with their data structure and data shapes. So we wanted to create a really comfy, safe environment to go and work with data, come across the common challenges, learn how to approach that, so you could then take that back into the workplace. We post a new challenge every Wednesday, and we'll post up the solution to that challenge the following Tuesday. We've got nearly 200 challenges, I think it is now, maybe well above that. I've completely lost count. We've been doing this for a while, since February 2019, I think. But we've got a whole load of ways for you to learn. We thought the challenges were going to be enough. I was completely wrong by that. Again, it was a skills question more than anything else. So I wrote a number of how-to posts. I think it's about 50 that are on the site, that went and forms the first book in a very unedited version. The book is very edited. I found that out the hard way. But those how-to posts are really kind of just opening up the door to the knowledge that you need to know to really get your teeth into all things data prep. And I've broken that into the different stages you'll go through, from connecting to data, starting to do cleaning, reshaping, etc., all the way through to those outputs. And we're also trying something new. Opened this up just a couple of weeks ago now, something called Recipes. Really what it is prep recipes. So how do you go about simple tasks in data prep using Tableau Prep to kind of do the 1, 2, 3 step through those in a really basic way. So hopefully there's a few different ways for you to learn, depending on whether you like to sit there and muddle over something yourself, or you really want to be guided through a process. So you'll find all of those on prepanddata.com or our older website, prepanddata.blogspot.com. Either way, those links are being shared in the chat, or I can always send them out afterwards as well. So let's talk about the thing that you really want to know about. It's not about me, it is about the tool. So Tableau Prep, let's dive in, let's have a look. And we're going to work on one of our prepping data exercises. So all of our prepping data exercises can be found under the challenge index. And if I just move the Zoom controls up way for a second, our challenges typically look something like this. We'll set a scenario, we'll show you what the data looks like, and then we'll set you some requirements and tell you about what the output should look like. There is no one right way to prepare data. As long as you've got the right output and you're taking the input, you're all good. So it's kind of hard to not set a controlled output when we set these challenges. We've got to guide people somewhere, where in the real world, you'll have the input and you've got to go and try and work that out. More on those thoughts later. But for now, let's dive into this challenge where I was going to go and find a friend who was just back from Antarctica. I know we mentioned it earlier, Jim. People were there. She was out there visiting. She came back. So I wanted to pop up to Scotland to go and see her because that's where she grew up while she was back in the UK. So I've got some weather data from London and some weather data for Edinburgh. Did I need to pack my coat? That's what I kind of really wanted to know. So like all prep and data challenges, we can go and import the data, and that's just a Google Sheet that looks something like this that we can download and pick up. Notice that we've actually got these two tables within one sheet. That's not easy to always go and work with, but really the messy stuff that we're working with is this. One big blob, a little bit of space, and then another kind of blob of data. So let's go and get stuck into that and see how far we get. When you open up Tableau Prep, it looks and feels very much like desktop. So we've got loads of links to videos and blog posts that will absolutely help you wrap your head around all the things that are going on within Tableau Prep. But really, it's this connect to data button that we want to go and work with first of all. You can go and connect to Tableau server, all of your database sources under the sun. I saw somebody mention Box as an input. I know you want to write to it as well. I can't comment whether that's coming or not. That's well outside my domain. But most of the time, really where Prep's aimed at is working with file-based data mostly, because it will just be in that messier state than what you're loading into a database. So I've gone and grabbed the input for this data set before, and here we go. So when I go and connect to a data set, just in the same way that I'm connecting in Tableau Desktop, I can then go and bring in the data that I want to go and start working with. This input step and all of these different stages within Prep are known as steps. The input step doesn't tell us much. It tells us what fields we have, so what columns we have in the data set. It gives us a little bit of a clue around the preview of what some of the things that's going on, and a whole load of controls in what we class as the configuration pane. I'm not going to fully teach you Prep today. I haven't got time to do that, but I just want to talk through some of those major ways that we'll go about using Prep and some of the neat touches there is along the way. Now, with any data, I mentioned that Prep is very much an exploration tool. It is. So much so, we have this option to just go and view the clean data. That's the same as if you've used Tableau Prep before and you have a slightly older version. That's the same as clicking on that plus at the end of that input and saying, I want a clean step. You get exactly the same result, but the development team really saw this kind of time where everybody was looking at the data before they went and worked with it. Good, that completely makes sense. What Tableau shows me is the flow pane at the top of the screen. So where we're building our workflow, taking the input all the way through to when we're ready to output it for analysis. We have our profile pane in the middle of the screen. This is where Tableau is ultimately showing me what does my data look like, showing me the profile of the data. And that's where these little histograms that are coming to bear. And I also see the data pane down at the bottom of the screen. Now, because this is Tableau, it's a very interactive tool. I can go and see in my metric field, for example, I have the word metric. This is where if I wasn't looking at that data set originally and seeing it as two separate tables, I'd kind of realize that I've got two sets of the same headers in my data set. If I go and click on metric, I can see that row of data that gets highlighted because of it. So all of the other data gets filtered out. So I'm just looking at this one row that's about metric, has all of the same header names. So I know that I've just got my headers twice. I don't want that. So in anything Tableau products, if we don't want something, we can go and right click on it and go and say exclude, and it gets rid of it. Done. I don't need to think about that row of data anymore. What that actually changes, and you'll see this number of changes 1 now, I have a little audit log on the side of my screen. I can go and pop that open and see all of the changes that I make to my data set. So Tableau Prep is nicely self-documenting as well as we go through it. Right. I did say that I'd focus on the big challenges first. And this is where I'd wow you with group and replace, but Klaus has already done that. So thank you, Klaus. The way that we go and think about group and replace is when we have string fields, so our alphabetic and character-based data, so things that basically aren't numbers or dates, or Boolean true falses. I can see that I've got Edinburgh as my most popular data value. London, the correct spelling, is my second. But then I've got some pretty dodgy spellings within this. Now, I'm going to let you into a secret about this data set. I don't say this to many people. I built this data set to test Tableau Prep, to actually break Tableau Prep and then go to the dev saying, oh, it'd be really great, it didn't pick up these values. I will show you exactly what I did when I first picked up Tableau Prep and tested it with this data set. I click on my ellipsis menu, my 3 dots. I can go down to group values. I could go and manually do this, and at the end of the day, I only have 12 different values in my city field, so that wouldn't be big. Let's imagine this data set is 10 billion rows instead. I'm going to get a repetitive strain injury if I'm doing all of those clicks, so let's not do that. Let's go and use some of those clever algorithms we've got to go and start tidying this up. So let's take those 12 city fields or values in my city field at the moment, and let's go and group those by pronunciation. When we group by pronunciation, as we've mentioned earlier, Tableau is looking at how those words would be said, because my domain is in English UK. It's looking at how these words would be said in English, and we go and start grouping those together. If I click on Edinburgh, we can actually go and see those values that have been pulled in together. So we've got Edinburgh, Edinburgh, Edinburgh. So all of those different spellings, even where we have ones or exclamation marks, Tableau ignores those characters. But because in English, the I and the E is said so similarly, that makes it really easy for us just to go and, or Tableau Prep, to kind of know that these things should be grouped together. You can always untick them if you want to, if they're not right. London, we're pulled together if my prep updates. London, 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 a whole load of different versions of London. But our password version of Edinburgh and O'Donnell, a poor spelling of London, a really poor spelling of London, like I think somebody was just smashing the keys and hoping for the best at that point, haven't been grouped together. But if we click done, let's save the progress that we've made. Let's go and hit on ellipsis, and let's try a different algorithm. Let's try common characters. Oh, and this has been happening with my new laptop, so blame Max M1 chips. So within that change, if I just dive back into that, this time when we base everything by common characters, O'Donnell has been grouped together with London. It's exactly the same characters, but just in a different order. So we've still made progress, but this wild password selection, almost password-esque spelling of Edinburgh wasn't captured. No, that isn't my password before anybody tries to lock me out of my account. So let's try a spelling algorithm. And this time, Prep does the magic. Anybody who's got eagle eyes will have spotted this minus and this plus. This is Tableau allowing you to control the sensitivity of the algorithm. Now, this password version of Edinburgh is spelled so badly. Tableau's taken down the sensitivity of the algorithm to make sure it's capturing the data, because I've got 3 values. It knows I'm trying to group it together, so it's expecting less values back. And that's why it's been super clever and controlled that for me and dropped it down to Edinburgh. But if I click on done, I've got a clean data field. Trying to build a big chunky if statement or whatever else I might do to try and pull those together, that would be really painful. So thankfully we don't have to do that. We've got some clever group and replacing. Now I want to go and start to understand the actual values in my data set for the different days that I've got. But I've got my different metrics and the ways that they get measured, and they're held separately. Well, Tableau Prep is still a Tableau tool. We can go and build calculations that go and tie some of these things together and iterate really quickly. So if I want to go and tie my metric and my measure together in one column, because that's going to help me with my next step, I absolutely can. One of the things I love about Prep, because it is ordinal in how it goes about things, I can go and use the same name on data fields. And if I'm using metric and metric already exists, Prep gives me a little warning saying, you sure you want to overwrite this, Carl? Sometimes it's right, I don't, but this time I do. But I can go and combine my metric and my measure together to give me a clean field that will become the headers in my table shortly. That allows me to right click on measure and go and remove that field. You'll notice that my audit log, this kind of changes pane down the left-hand side, is kind of building up slowly and it's doing things in order. What's wonderful is you can pretend to be Doctor Who if you want to. You can time travel, you can drag these around, and we can go and get rid of measure before we've done any of those grouping steps. The only problem is I need measure in my metric calculation that I just formed. So that's going to break everything. So great power, but also just be careful with that you're making all the steps in a logical order. Also, as you learn how to do different things, you'll start to see the effects that they're having. So I love prep for that, being that learning environment for us. Pretty much cleaned up the data. I just need to go and change my values to be whole numbers, because that's going to help when I go and start to pivot this data. Because to analyze data, it's good if we have one individual column per different measure that I have within my data set. That's going to help us when we dive into Tableau Desktop. Let's go and pivot. I click on the plus at the end. I go and say that I want to pivot. Both moving columns to rows or changing rows to columns, as we're about to do, are possible. Just changing this configuration pane at the top. My new columns are going to be formed from that metric field that I've just gone and built. And then my fields that are going to go and drop into those new columns are going to be my values. Just in case I've got any duplicates, I can make that an average. You can go and apply the logic that works for your example. I add a clean step to just go and see what that output actually looks like. And one of the subtle things that I love about prep is as soon as you go and change anything about one of those fields, they move them over to the left-hand side. So if you've got a really wide data set of loads of columns, the things that you're changing always move over to be visible on your screen. I can absolutely go and move them around and move them back, but it just helps me understand the changes that I've made. I've got a clean data set. I'm ready to go and do my analysis. I absolutely could add an output, and I can decide to go and output to either a file, a published data source, so that's living on Tableau server, or database tables. And if we just select database tables, because I know that was a question that's come in, there originally were 7 database connections that have come in. They're being built out slowly as that ability to go and write back against those data sets, as long as you have permissions to do so. I won't write against database tables today, but we can also push out into CRM analytics. I could go and create a file, but what if I wasn't sure if this was the data that I wanted? Real subtle thing with prep is as soon as you have a step, I can go and right click on it and I can go and preview that in Tableau Desktop. Tableau is going to write a temporary little hyper file for me to use that data in Tableau Desktop. So I can go and see whether I've got the actual data set in the shape that I need to do the analysis that I want to do. Well, I wanted to look at my different cities. And I didn't form my date into a date. There we go. So that's me learning that I still haven't done all the things that I want to do. So let's go and make those our different days of the week. And do I need to take my coat? Let's go and look at the rainfall. Well, if I'm in London, I would expect a Monday to be a wet day, but the rest of the week, relatively dry for a day in London. There's still a bit of rainfall about. However, I'm going to get drenched in Edinburgh, so I'd better take my coat for Wednesday. So really quickly, I've learned that the data structure is the way I want it. I just need to go and make that tweak and change my string field of my date to a date. Now I'm ready to go and output that. As soon as I go and choose where I want that to happen, I can output files as hyperfiles, Excel files, or CSVs. I can just say, let's go and drop this into my downloads. Let's call this our Newbies hyper. Except that hasn't run yet. Tableau Prep only goes and runs that output when I go and click on run. That's taken 0 seconds. And you can see that I've got a hyperfile that is ready to go. It's looking blank. That's just because my prep is playing up a little bit. But we can see that the data's there. So that will be in my output. And it's done. That's how hard prep flows can be. Ultimately, why I love Tableau Prep is it's really boiled down the cleaning work to 7 steps that you'll use really frequently. A clean step to go and clean up those difficult values. Adding in new rows to change the granularity of your data set. Granularity is a great concept. I'd love to come back and do a separate talk on that at some other point, because it's the one thing that people don't know enough about when they're working with data. Aggregating steps to reduce that granularity and take that up to a higher level. So take complexity out of data sets too. Pivoting as we did earlier, but also pulling together different data sets, either joining to add different columns together into other data sets, or going and stacking data sets on top of each other where you've got the same structure, you've just got multiple files of it with union. Or we're going to go and output the data once we've finished that flow. You can write your own scripts. If you have an instance of R and Python that your Tableau Prep version can go and connect to, you can do that. Or you can make use of Einstein's prediction engine as well, all within Prep. There's a huge amount of power here. It has been boiled down to 7 steps, but as we saw with group and replace, there's a lot of detail and value within that. If we look at dates, dates are being able to do conversions. So rather than writing big calculations, they're there as easy clicks. So this is why we create the prep and data challenges, to go and allow for those things to happen. So let me just duck back into our presentation just really quickly, just before we dive out of here and go into, not presentation view, that's not going to help. There we go. Before we go in for some questions. As I mentioned at the top, the one thing that I'd love you all to do is actually what helps in any data work, plan what you're going to do, have a look at what questions you might answer, then what's a good way to do that? It's not saying that you have to, that has to be your output, but certainly when you come to data prep, thinking about the questions you're going to answer with your data set. So you're building your data set for the questions your users might have. When I was writing the book, I boiled it down to 4 different stages: getting to know your data, working out the output, so the desired state you want to get it to, trying to work out the logical transitions you're going to make to do that all on paper first before you go and build it, because that helps when you get stuck, and also means that you kind of stick to a clear path rather than go on a tangent. Because getting to know your data, let's say it's just this little Excel extract at the top here, actually just sketching that out, taking a paper and pen and working out what's categorical data, i.e. your dimensions and your discrete fields in your data set, and what are the values, what's the things that you're analyzing. Well, here my measures of these numbers, they're actually sales of different soap products, either liquid soap or soap bars, in different stores that I'm actually selling in. And I've got a different column for each of my months. That's not an ideal data structure, but if I start to look at this and just sketch it out really quickly, I don't need to rebuild the whole table to start to understand what is where within my table. That's going to help with that reshaping effort. The next step off the back of that is working out, so what do I want? And again, a quick sketch will do this. I know that I want a column for my branches, so whether it's Lewisham or Wimbledon, a column for which products am I actually selling, a column for my dates, because we know that Tableau handles dates so well, and also let's go and specify what those values are. So here, when I'm working out the desired state, I'm also dropping some little notes to myself. Well, what do I want to do? Well, I want to get rid of the word soap. I know it's all about soap, so we can move on from that. It doesn't matter. And then it's taking a little step back and thinking about how I go from that input to that output. So where I'm doing certain cleaning operations or where I'm changing the shape of the data through pivoting, I don't have to know what to do within the tool to do this. I'm almost working out a little step-by-step guide that I can then go and work out what's the actual technical way of doing that. A great way for new people who aren't used to using the tool or used to using data prep skills to work their way through this. And then we dive into the tool and we actually build it. And as I've mentioned a few times, prep is this great place to go and learn how to do this. So we could deep dive into another challenge and use week 6. Because of how many questions and chat messages we've got coming in, I'd rather get to those. But those prep and data challenges are there. Go through and build those steps, get to know the input, work out the desired state, then work out how you're going to go and get between those before you actually go and build that final output. And it's a really powerful way to think about the subject before you kind of get yourself a little bit lost, which is easy to do with data preparation. But it also helps you go and Google things better when you do get stuck, because you kind of know what you're trying to do at each stage. So what would my advice be on next steps? My advice would be take part in some of the prep and data challenges. You might need to read a few more how-to posts to do that. January 2021 and January 2022 were both beginner months. So we've put lots of those links to those how-to posts actually in the challenge itself. So you can go and rely on those if you want to. But taking part in those challenges will slowly build up that skill set. So then when you have the opportunity to go and grab a data set and it's not quite ready for analysis, you can go and do that, as well as actually understanding what a good data set for analysis actually looks like. I wrote about that quite a lot in Prep Up and Running. I've written about good analysis and what that leads to in communicating with data in my second book. And I'm in the process of writing my third book called Data Curious, which will hopefully be out late spring next year. Where that's looking at how leaders, what they need to know in organizations to go and deliver great projects. What's ironic about both of those other 2 books is I write a lot about data preparation. So a few people have mentioned that if you are really good and clear with what you're doing with data preparation, it makes the analysis easier, it makes the analysis better, And it also means you can help a lot of other people who don't necessarily have some of the analytical skills that you do. Or if you've been using Tableau Desktop for a while, it can help shortcut somebody else's learning journey before they're being really effective with the tool as well. So yeah, please do dive into those resources and make use of it. And if you feel like I'm missing something, do give me a shout on Twitter or LinkedIn, and I'm always happy to go and create some custom posts or fill any knowledge gaps there are. So at that point, I will say thank you very much, and I will hand back for some questions.
Thank you, Carl. Great session. Like always, people were really excited in the chat about prep and about your presentation. So thank you very much.
Oh, that was fantastic, and I plan to spend a whole lot more time with prep personally. One thing I saw coming up in the chat kind of repeatedly was people users didn't know they had prep. I'm not aware of this tool. Are you familiar enough with the licensing agreements so that you can explain how they get it and how to use it?
Yeah, so Tableau has 3 main license types these days. So what's called creator, explorers, and viewers. So viewers just have access to either server or Tableau Cloud to go and look at the content somebody else produces, not a Tableau Prep user. When we have the explorers, they actually have access to Tableau Prep as a web edit version. So that lives on the server, and it has to be enabled by your server admin. So not everybody has opened it up, because prep can be a little bit memory hungry. So server admins are a little bit protective of their server worlds. They want it to stay up and stable and really performant. So you could get access to the web edit version through there. Prep's been designed as a web first tool, so you won't feel many differences when you're using the web version rather than the own application that is Tableau Prep Builder. So creators, you have a seat on the server to go and publish everything, all of your good work to, data sources and workbooks. But you also have an access to download Tableau Desktop, but also Tableau Prep Builder. So if you have a creator license at work, there should be nothing standing in the way of using Tableau Prep Builder, unless your IT teams want to test it out. And it's been out there for a while now, so more and more people are having access to it. You might need to ask permission for it, but it does come as part of that license. So yeah, you can use that.
I actually have 2 questions, Carl. I've been using prep quite intensively, and so one question would be, do you have any rule of thumbs when you open up a new clean step, for example? I've had clean steps with like 50, 60, 70 changes. I mean, obviously you somehow lose the overview, but when do you do a new clean step, for example, or when do you keep it in one?
That is a brilliant question. Yeah, we haven't got a performance recorder in prep like we do in Tableau Desktop. So there's no true. Yeah, one day. I'm just going to keep my fingers crossed again. I want quite a lot. I'm quite a demanding guy. So when we have the performance recorder, I'll talk about that from a performance standpoint. At the moment, we don't know. When do I use a new clean step? It's when I want to go and just kind of sense check the data and see the data again. So certainly off the back of a pivot or a join, have I got the data that I expect to get? Just add a clean step in. That's going to give you the assurity that you've done the right thing in the way that you want to. But do you, like Klaus, have 60 or 70 changes in a single clean step? That's okay if that workbook's staying with you, Klaus. If you're passing that on to a colleague, do they need to dig through those 60 or 70 steps? Probably not. They're not going to be your best friend after that. That's in the situation where I would break each of those clean steps up, because you can write a different name for that clean step, but you can also give a 250 character description, or maybe 500 characters, I can't remember where it's at these days, description of what goes on within that step. That really helps if you're handing over your work to somebody else, that they're going to know what you're trying to do with that step. So if it breaks, they can fix it. Or if they just want awareness of what you're doing, what techniques you've used, you can talk them through it. You can also color code your steps, and that also helps that kind of documentation of what you've done. And also, prep, I haven't mentioned this, but it's a great tool for iteration. If your IT team's like, we do everything in SQL, that's fine, but you could use prep to go and understand what changes you want to make. So you can then hand that workflow to your IT colleagues, and they'll be able to turn that into a SQL script pretty easily.
And the second question is, basically quite similar. So when do you, I mean, these prep flows can become huge, at least mine became huge. So similar question, when do you split it up in separate flows? So I've experienced from a performance standpoint that sometimes it just makes sense to settle something in a table and then start fresh again with this table.
Yeah, a couple of versions of Prep Conductor ago, Tableau released what's called link flows. I spoke about these on Monday in London. Link flows are super easy to go and take bite-sized chunks of your flow and link them together. It's literally a drop-down box. Tableau understands that you're using the same data source. If you use similar naming conventions, it knows pretty much the order. You've just got to go and fill it in. It can give you alerts if those flows don't work for whatever reason and stop the next one's running if that's going to cause an issue.
But that's prep conductor. Is that prep conductor? That's prep conductor possibly.
Yeah,
okay.
That is. So with linked flows, that's made me go and break up my flows a little bit more than what I did previously when I would have to run them all together or save them separately and then link them back together by running them sequentially. That's no fun for anybody. But the way I think about it is, if this first chunk of a flow would be useful, but maybe for other people as well as me, I'll save that as an individual flow and run that separately. Because then they can start using either the output of that data set or use that flow themselves with what they do next. So it's almost like saying, how should we break up a dashboard? That question probably is worth about 7 books all of its own right. So it's kind of hard to say, but a rule of thumb is if you can find a chunk that's useful for other people, go and run that as a separate flow, especially if you've got Prep Conductor, because it is so easy to link these things back together. And you're right, there's some big performance savings that way to make it all run a little bit more smoothly than it might do otherwise.
I saw someone asking in the Q&A about running prep from the command line. Would you recommend doing that? Or, I mean, Prep Conductor is great, but obviously there is the additional cost thing that turns some people off. So running from the command line would be a cheap alternative, right?
You can do it. It's obviously just losing lots of that richness that we just spoke about, linked flows, getting those error messages in the way that you want them. If you're used to running things from the command line, you can. Absolutely. I think it ultimately comes back to that, how important are these workflows to you and your organization, that sometimes it's an additional spend, and don't get me wrong, especially when times are tough economically, that's sometimes tough to justify. But you're putting a lot of assurity around the data if you are using things like Prep Conductor rather than trying to kind of do it on the command line. Yeah, not the easiest thing to do from running on a command line, but also not impossible either. But there's some big downsides to that.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have other questions? Viraj, anything from the chat or?
Yeah, so there's one question regarding, when pivoting twice in Tableau Prep, the data is, gets doubled. So how can you pivot the data more than once without having an issue?
So number one is, do you need to? And if you do, you absolutely can. If you're doubling the data and creating that duplication, then I'd say you're not using pivoting correctly. You might need to introduce a step in between to actually go and aggregate those results back to a single record. So when you then pivot again, you're getting those single records back. That's all about the configuration of those pivots. Again, it's kind of almost impossible to answer how to do that. The forums are a great place to ask those questions. If you're already stuck, use some dummy data and show what's actually happening. People can guide you out. You can absolutely tag me in that. And if I find some spare moments, I will jump on. I try and answer prep forum posts every now and then, but normally there's a few people on there who are a little bit quicker than me to get to them.
Nice, thanks.
There are a few people out there that really know prep well, so it's a good place to go if you have a specific question.
It's not just me, I promise, World. It's not just me.
So are there any resources or tips, which we can, because we see for Tableau, there are many blogs and stuff, and for prep, unfortunately, it's not that, that many. So, yet, yeah.
Yes is what I'd say about that, Viraj. I can't wait for there to be more. Genuinely, I would love more people to be writing about prep.
Right.
Jared Flores does some great work. Jenny Martin, Tom Prowse, Jonathan Umby did some great stuff in the early days. Jack Parry has done quite a few things. There's the prep user group that is a global user group, and they shift between Asia Pacific time and then a little bit more focused on the US as well for a second session. They kind of take it in turns to run those sessions that way. For Europe, we get all of them because we're stuck in the middle of GMT most of the time. Go us, but also we're creating most of the content for prep, so you're welcome. But really, the user group's a great place to start. We bring the development team in from prep to talk at those, or you're kind of getting those people who are answering those questions in the forum, or like some me and the team to go in and kind of share what we're doing in prep. They might be hints and tips, but it also might be how do you go and solve some of the bigger problems that you might come across in the tool, or just talk about the new features that keep coming out. Parameters coming into prep just recently. There is so much value there. If you haven't looked at parameters in prep, please go and do it. And I will quickly try and, while I'm answering your questions, go and grab a link to my how to use parameters in prep, because if you do have the access to go and use Tableau prep, using parameters is so powerful. You can do some pretty amazing things around creating bespoke files for people really easily, but also running quite sophisticated models pretty quickly as well, and letting people go and pick their own values. There you go. Drop that into the chat. So there's the link there for using parameters in prep too.
Thank you. That's awesome. And this is probably just one question last, do you think prep is as mature as Ultrix?
No, Ultrix is nearly 30 years old now. it's a very different tool. Just quickly on that, I say that flippantly. I am an Ultrix and Tableau partner. I've taught both tools for years now. Ultrix is data prep. It's spatial and it's predictive, all in one thing. But that means that you have 175 tools to learn. Tableau prep is data prep at the moment, and it's 7 tools. Trying to teach somebody 7 tools is a lot easier than 175, but of course having 175 things is going to be much richer. I haven't found an answer to a question of what Ultrix can't do yet. Genuinely, whenever somebody asks me the question, one of my members of my team will normally work it out, and already probably have written a macro to go and do something for it or an app. Whereas with prep, we're at the early days of that. It did start in April 2018. The tool is rapidly developing in terms of functionality, but also us as a community learning how we make the most of it and getting that knowledge out there. So please join me in that. That'd be great to see more people writing about the tool. It's got a lot of value, especially to people learning these skills in the first place. It's a great entry point. And then you absolutely can kick onto Ultrix, which is more expensive. But you can kick on to other tools that can do some really great stuff, whether that's focusing on the geographic side like ArcGIS, some more of the predictive elements like SAS and those kind of tools. Otherwise, you've got some good options within prep and coding directly.
That's awesome. Great. Thanks. And I think I'm going to, start putting more time on Tableau prep now, with this.
Oh,
Great.
that's it.
Thanks.
Kyle, can we expect to ever see Tableau prep on the data source page in desktop?
Well,
I mean, to bring the two tools together, right?
Yeah, it was interesting. I was reflecting on this with my class at the data school earlier today, that all of your data preparation, including pivoting, but you can't pivot twice in Tableau desktop. It all used to be in the initial connection. And the development team realized that they were trying to squeeze too much into that initial connection page. We're going back a few years here. And it was that realization that too much was going on within that screen that we needed to break it out into a separate tool. Are we going to see closer alignment between prep and desktop? I really hope so. You've seen from my talk today how it's just a click and open up in desktop to go and see where I'm at. I want to be able to jump the other way. I'm working in desktop. I want to click go to prep, and I can go back into a prep environment where it's either the flow that powers that data source, or it's maybe it opens that as an input step. So I can go and make some quick changes in the prep space to then go and output that data and carry on working with it in that same workbook that I was just working with. I think what we're seeing come out of the tool, and I don't know this for sure, it's my own speculation, but we're going towards a more web-based environment. So that makes those connections much easier to do than having all of these different applications running on everyone's computer that we then have to link together, version controls, elements to that. So absolutely, I hope to see that. I kind of expect to see that. but also I wouldn't expect it by next Thursday. That might be a little bit too soon.
Is
be a
there an
little
idea on the forum which we can vote for?
Yes.
Yeah. Enid's waiting patiently there. She's got a cahoots for us. She says, "My turn. Ready to go, Enid?"
Yeah, I'm ready. And this Kahoot is really simple, so don't expect too hard of questions. I really wanted to hear Carl. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I'll give you guys a couple seconds to log in. That's a little. Oh, we have a lot.
Great. And are we giving away e-learning codes for the winners of this?
I think we
Yes,
are. We're
we
giving
are.
away three. So top 3.
Top 3.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great opportunity.
Okay, but Carl, I'm sorry, you're not eligible.
Oh, I was going to play along. I was hoping I was
Well, you
going
can
to get the
play
victory.
along.
You can
just
play
can't win.
along.
I will play along. It will make it top 4 if I get into that top 3.
We
'cause
caught
I hope I
Klaus.
don't need e-learning at this point, but hey.
Carl, you can play, but then just be slow and don't answer it quickly.
I think you might be expecting too much of me. It's quite late here in London now.
All right, I'll give it one more minute, then we'll get started.
I have a 1-year-old child and he hasn't slept well for his first 15 months of his life. So it's I think going slow is my only speed at these times.
Okay, I think we've slowed down, so we can get started.
Here we go.
Okay, first one. Besides the US, what country do most of our attendees live? Five seconds. UK, yep. Tapia,
Nice, Tapia.
nice. Okay, question 2.
Okay.
Which month had the best attendance in lifetime, meaning when they checked in? If you guys remember this one. This might be a trick question because our data, as you saw, some people did check in, some people did RSVP time. So we'll see what we get. Okay, so a tie between, which is interesting because September was the other graph. So I kind of, that could go both ways. I feel like it's both of them.
And Shelby has come on top.
Shelby stole the lead. Okay, that's true or false? Latin America's most attended session was order evaporation. This was Virage's graph. Yeah, that one's true.
And Preston Wendy. That's a nice name, DVD.
DVD. Which job do most of our attendees hold? What job type?
That's interesting.
You guys are moving fast. Everybody's already answered. Yep.
Analyst.
Almost everybody got this one right. Wow.
Keely.
Tableau Trep can group by pronunciation. We talked a lot about this one.
This Kahoot quiz better be accurate on this one. No pressure.
And I like the image that you have put in. So that's a nice one.
Letters.
When you have a
Letters.
data set that looks like that, you're really in trouble, right?
Yeah.
We got 7
So
people.
true.
7. Yes, it can definitely group by pronunciation. Oh, okay.
Kelly. Kelly is still on the top.
And then what is the best way to get rid of metric, which Cara talked about?
Nice options.
I'm really hoping people haven't clicked go back to the file and delete it there. Oh, come on.
I really thought that was the right one.
When
It's
all
fine,
else shows. And then this is just a poll. I know, like with our previous sessions, Tableau Prep is an area a lot of people have felt uneasy about. So I'm hoping you guys feel better about it now.
%ish. That would be
What
good.
did I
Or
answer?
Okay, that's
Oh,
good. That's really good.
24% says it's got the feeling 100%. Wow.
Yeah, that's really
That's
good.
wonderful. Yeah, that's really
Okay,
good.
so who are our winners? Wendy?
Wendy
Wait,
is the third. Then DVD on the second. First goes to the spotlight is on Haley.
Can you guys type in your emails in the chat, and then you would be hearing from us.
Awesome, and congrats.
Congrats.
Congratulations. Okay, good. We're almost at the end. Let me bring up my screen again. Yeah, so we have one slide left, and the last meeting of the year is shortly before the first meeting of the next year. So we will go on in 2023. Next meeting is scheduled for January 19th. You can already sign up, grab the QR code. I think we have the link to register in the chat as well. And we are really hoping to see you next year again.
Yeah, this meeting, the topic for the meeting, the speaker at the meeting is one of the product managers in Seattle for Tableau, Harveen, and Harveen is going to speak about all the resources that are available to new users and to people as they onboard and they become users of Tableau. And there's a wealth of things out there you can use. We saw it in the chat where people were saying, well, where can I learn about this? Where can I learn about that? Well, attend the meeting next January, and Harveen's going to take us through options that are available where you can go to get help and resources that are available to you. So we're looking forward to seeing you, and everybody have a great holiday.
Yeah.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Yeah, happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays, everyone. And thank you again, Carl, for a wonderful session and for taking the time to be here today with us.
Thank you for having me. This the newbie user group, I think you have all done an amazing job on this because it does get quite a lot of press that's out there. It's clearly making an impact by how many people have turned up to it. So to you all, happy holidays, but also thank you very much for what you've done. You've created a great platform for learning for people. So long may this continue. This is a great session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you.